Okay. Welcome to Breakneck through the Bible, class number 5. Again, Breakneck through the Bible, class number 5. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday and meaningful Sukkot, and we hopefully thank you all that came to the Sukkot party and joined us for a Sukkot party. So now we are on for a bunch of weeks straight, with hopefully not too many interruptions, except my son is getting married next week. So so there will be class next week. I will not be here to give it. 8:30 we should be 8:30 we should be in the middle of the I don't know if we should be in the middle of the chuppah. I don't know. It would be 9:30. No, we'd be middle of the first dance. So anyone who can make it, we would love to have you, and love to have you join us wherever if you can make it. It's in Lakewood at the Fountain Ballroom, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, Monday, October 23rd. So we'd love to have you all come and join us. Okay, so we are in. We just finished day 1, right? We had day 1. We finished that ends off with Yom Echad, right? That God is one, right? That it says Yom Echad one day instead of Yom Rishon the first day. And we said, why does it say that Yom Echad one day as opposed to Yom Rishon the first day? And we said because God was still only alone in His world. He was Echad Ba'olamo. He was number one in His world, the only one in His world. Nobody else was, right? Nothing else was there. The angels only get created on day 2, right? And last week we were talking about that there are 10 different classes of angels, right? And they go from the highest, right, the Chayos HaKodesh, which is the highest level of angels, all the way down to Ishim, which are, right, the angels that are closest to man, right? But just 10 different levels of different types of angels. And the angels that communicate with man, all are in the category of Ishim, right? Right, almost man, Ish from the word man, right? But Ishim, right, like plural, and they're the ones that communicate with man. Okay, so that's what takes place. That's where we go ahead, and that's ends off day 1. So now we start day 2, page 5 in the Stone Chumash. Okay, page 5 in the Stone Chumash. We have going ahead the second day. Okay, so Justin, would you like to read?
Yes.
Okay, verse number 6, chapter 1, verse number 6 in Genesis.
God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate between water and water." So God made the firmament and separated between the waters which were beneath the firmament and the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. God called to the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, the second day.
Okay, so what happens on day number 2?
Heaven is created.
Heaven is created. Okay. Well, heaven, okay, so it's actually interesting. So first of all, it says firmament, right? So you have firmament, right? So firmament is one type of heaven. Okay, and how many different heavens are there?
9.
7. 7 different heavens. How do we know there are 7 different heavens? And we told you. How do I know there are 7 different heavens?
Because it's 7 days for
interesting.
God to create the world.
Okay, but why does that say that there are 7 heavens? Right, this took God 7 days to create the world.
Well,
but
it doesn't mean from heaven.
Right, so the answer is, but there are 7 different Hebrew words for heaven. And so therefore each one of the Hebrew words, right, this word rakia, the word shamayim, right, the different words for heaven. And so therefore, since you have 7 different names, there are 7 different types of heaven, right, or levels of heaven. Okay, so now over here, God created the upper water, created the waters, right, and then He went to separate the water between the lower waters and the upper waters. The lower waters are the ones that are found here on Earth, right, that are it's called the subterranean or oceans, right, lakes, right. Those are called the lower waters, and the upper waters are the ones that are somewhere up above. And what exactly these upper waters are, I do not know. It's a very, very mystical idea here of what they are. I would say the upper waters are, at first at one point in time it might be the clouds, another point in time I thought maybe it's all the ice, right, the frozen ice floating around in space, that those are the upper waters. And then I went ahead and then actually, it's actually funny, I have a student that is just creating a company, actually that's where they take moisture out of the air, right, and turn it into water, right, able to turn it into water. And so what happens is that, it could be, we actually were, and as he says it, we're actually swimming in 19 trillion cups of drinking water. And it's all around us. It's in the air. We don't realize that we're in this ocean. But so I'm not sure where the upper waters are. And so what happened was he created the low waters and the upper waters, and God creates a firmament, a heaven in between the two. Yeah.
It may be also that it's not referring to the waters on the earth because the earth hasn't been created yet. It may be referring to just physical water as opposed to heavenly water.
Well, why are you saying the earth has not been created yet?
Because it says the earth has not been created yet.
No, it doesn't. Where does it say the earth was created?
The sun and the moon has not been created.
Correct. Where does it say the earth has not been created? And in fact, I would tell you, go back to verse number 2, right? And what does it say in verse number 2?
When the earth was astonishingly empty, which means it had to exist.
Well, astonishing him to go ahead and continue reading that verse. Right? The
Darkness
earth.
upon the surface of the deep, and the divine presence hovered upon the surface of the waters.
Right?
God
Right? So over the surface of the water. So you see there certainly was water. What was underneath the water? What was the water on? So clearly there was an earth. Because remember again, the story of Genesis, right? The 6 days, right? Chapter 1, where the Torah goes ahead in 31 verses, goes and tells us everything, right? The creation story. These are what I call almost bullet points. It's just a drop in the bucket. If we actually had to write books on how long and how God created the world, right? The books would take, right, would fill this room, right, with information on how that happened, right? So therefore, the Torah is not giving us a pecking order of this was created first, second, third, fourth, right? The Torah is giving us the ideas and the concept of what was created and sort of the spiritual sustenance of the world. Okay, so don't get caught up into that, right? Because clearly you see, right, there's water on day 1, and nowhere does it say God created water, right? And yet we know God created water, right? And so therefore, the Torah is just not talking about, right, when God created water, because it's not important to us. Yeah.
No. The earth may be a metaphor for a physicality or physical world.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean this planet Earth.
Correct. Again, certainly everything here, there's many layers, right? And certainly, right, many physical layers and many spiritual levels to it, right? And therefore, right, there are many. And again, when it comes to learning Torah, you have to be very careful. It's very tricky because when you have words, okay, when you go ahead in the Torah, you have to know what's meant to be taken literally and what's meant to be taken allegorically. And if somebody takes something that is meant to be taken literally and says, oh, that's not literal, right, it's just allegorical, he could be a heretic. If somebody takes something that is meant to be allegorical and says it's literal, he could also be a heretic. Right? So there's no safe way to say one or the other. Right? There's no safe way to go ahead and to say, well, you could explain it this way, explain it that way. Right? What happens is that you have to know what's meant to be literal, what's meant to be allegorical.
I didn't say it was, I said it could be.
Right. But I was just making the point. Because you have to just be careful when it comes to.
I thought you were calling me a heretic.
No, God forbid. Right? And, you know, you have to.
Get over it.
You should know. There's a great.
She had to slap me around.
There's a great joke about the heretic. There's one great joke about the heretic.
Yeah.
So the guy says, you know what, Rabbi? He says, I'm done studying. You know, this stuff. I'm going to go out and party. I'm just going to be a heretic. So the Rabbi says, fine. You want to be a heretic? Okay, you got to go meet Moshe the Apikoros. Right? Apikoros is the Hebrew name for heretic. He says, what do you say? He says, you have to go to this, go to this town and just go there and ask for Moshe the Apikoros. I said, okay. So he goes there, he comes to the town, he says, listen, he says, I'm looking for Moshe the Apikoros, Moshe the heretic. He says, okay, go down this street, you turn right, left, go to the end of the street, and the last house on the right is is Moshe Lapikars. Go knock on his door. And so the guy goes and the guy walks in. He sees, okay, comes to the street, comes to the last house on the block. He goes, he knocks on the door, and says, "Come in." He opens up the door, and he sees this man with a long white beard, with the table piled high with Jewish texts, right? And he's studying. He says, "I'm looking for Moshe Lapikars, right? I'm looking for Moshe the heretic." He says, "Well, that's me." He says, "You're a heretic?" He says, "You think it's so easy to be a heretic?" he says, "Don't confuse someone being a heretic and someone being ignorant. A lot of ignorant people floating around. Okay, that comes from a lack of information. To be a heretic, you have to learn first, and then you have to be a heretic. You know what I'm saying? Like, right? So it's not so easy to be a heretic, and you got to keep on learning for a while before you can become a heretic."
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Many times. Right? Right? So that's happening. Right? You have to go right to be. You got to know something, and then you can say what you agree with, what you don't agree with. But if you don't know anything, it's okay. So you're just ignorant. That's okay. Right? You know what I'm saying? Don't show your ignorance around. That's okay. And so that's what Moshe Lapikars. Okay. So anyway, that's why it's just always very important when you're studying Torah to make sure that we know what is meant to be taken literally and what is not meant to be taken literally. Okay, we have to we have to understand that very clearly, right? Where that comes from, right? And what is the case of being, right? Of what is literal and what's not. So God took the water, He splits the water, He takes an upper water, He makes a lower water, and He goes and He sticks a firmament. Okay, in Hebrew, firmament is rakia. Right? He goes and he creates the rakia and he separates between the upper waters and the lower waters. And I do not know what the upper waters are. Okay, it's a very mystical term. I don't know. Okay?
Lower waters of the other layer. The
But-
rakia.
You can do right. So the rakia has to be right on top of the rakia, and where the rakia is, etc. Like where heaven begins or whatever it is. It's actually quite interesting. They have these space rides where they say you pay $100,000, they'll take you into outer space.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So all they do is they just take an airplane and fly it. I think 90,000 feet. I think at 90,000 feet they technically call that outer space. Right. So that's all that's happening. You know what I'm saying? So it's no big deal. Right. Right. So again, where heaven goes. Right up to where heaven stops. So have the waters, lower waters, upper waters, splits it, puts the firmament in between. That puts the heaven in between the lower waters and the upper waters. Okay.
It could be.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just a thought. It could be that the heaven, the space, you float,
Right.
and the water you also float.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where the waters are, the waters aren't. So like that kind of is that's what it is. So you have the upper waters, you have the lower waters. The lower waters now are down below.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
What is the word firmament? What is
Firmament.
Yeah.
But they created the firmament is one of the names for heaven. Right? There are 7 names for heaven, and firmament is one of them. The Hebrew word is rakia. Okay, so there are 7 levels of heaven. Rakia is one of them.
So what is heaven?
Okay.
Okay, so we have the same word in French, tu regardes dans le firmament, meaning where your eye cannot reach.
Okay.
Right.
So it's interesting, right? You know what color the sky is, don't you?
Blue.
Right, it's not blue.
It's not blue.
There's nothing there.
It's clear.
It's clear.
Okay.
Right. There's no blue backdrop.
I don't know.
Right. There's no blue backdrop to the sky. Right. It's right. It's refract. Right. It's refract. It's right. The blue. There is no heaven on the right. There is no end of the place here. So anyway, so there are different heavens. Different things take place in different levels of heaven. Okay, and so therefore we go ahead and so God said He splits the water, upper waters and lowers. Now the lower waters were perturbed at this development. Why were they perturbed at this development?
They were separated from
Because they were separated from God, right? They wanted to be close to God. So what did they do? So they go ahead and they say, well, we want to go ahead and we want to become closer to God, right? And they begin to rise up. And as they began to rise up, what happened?
They
began to flood the world. And God says that's not good. Right? Why? Because if the world is being flooded, right, man can't live. So God said to the water, listen, stay down below, right? Stay down where I put you. And I promise you that any offering that would be brought in the temple will always have salt from the water. Okay, and then actually in the water, the salt from the water will be brought every day when there's offerings that are brought on the altar. And the water, your water will be brought in the temple actually on the offering on Sukkot, on the holiday Sukkot, right? There's something called Nisa Chamayim, the pouring of the water. And when it goes ahead and the water gets, right, the water gets poured down, gets poured. And so therefore that's the water, and the salt will always be brought on the offerings. Therefore in the temple, right, whenever every offering was brought, it always had salt on it. And that is the source of why we have salt, why we always dip our bread in salt. Why do we dip our bread in salt? Right? Every time we eat bread, we dip it in salt because we eat bread, we're sitting at a table. Our table is considered a miniature altar. Why is it considered a miniature altar? Right? Because the altar, right? The altar is a place of where that is used to serve God. Our tables, right? Why do we eat?
To serve God.
To serve God, right? Not because the food tastes good, but we eat to serve God, right? To have the strength to serve God. And so therefore our tables are considered miniature altars. And since our tables are considered miniature altars, right? And that's where our tables are considered miniature altars. Therefore, every time we eat, and bread is considered a meal, then we go ahead and we dip the bread into salt. And that's the source of why we dip bread into salt. Now it's also interesting, another reason given for salt, which I think is a pretty cool reason, is salt is a compound, right? It's NaCl, right? It's sodium chloride, right? Sodium chloride. What's fascinating about it, what happens if you run out of salt in your body?
You're in big trouble.
You die. Now you're in big trouble. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You're dead, right? You run out of salt. And it was funny. I was, not funny. I saw a guy a mover, who was moving stuff. It was on Monday, a hot day in the summer. And all says, give me salt, give me salt, give me a salt shaker. And so I had whatever, it's in somebody else's house. So grab the thing of salt. He takes a salt shaker, pours it into his hand, and he gulps it down, just like eats it just straight up, because his body was cramping up all over because he was low on salt. So he needed salt. And so. And what happens is, so they go ahead and, right, it was missing the salt. So if you don't have salt, you die. What's interesting is sodium and chloride, the two compounds, sodium by itself and chloride by itself will kill you. Okay? Sodium by itself and chloride by itself will kill you. Yet you put them together and you create, right, you can't live without them. Right? Also, another interesting idea is that the sodium, right? The sodium is a powder in its natural form, and chloride is a gas, right? So, I heard this from Rabbi Becher, a very nice explanation. So he said, is that that sodium, right? It's a physicality, right? The world is a combination of the physicality and the spirituality. And we say, okay, is the world physical? Is it spiritual? What is the world, right? And what happens is we say, if you have the physicality by itself, right, the sodium, right, you're dead. If you have just spirituality, you're dead. You take the two, you take the physicality, you take the spirituality, you merge them together, right, and that's what the world is all about. Right? Judaism believes you go ahead, you take the physical world, and you infuse it with spirituality. For example, you have a bottle of water, right? You have a bottle of water. What happens when you have a bottle of water? Right? You go ahead and you drink it. But before you drink it, what do?
Say a blessing.
You make a blessing. Right? So now you've taken the physical, you've infused it with spirituality, you've elevated it from a physical bottle of water, and you've turned it into something spiritual. Right? You've infused the spirituality, you've married the physical and the spiritual, you've taken what is physical, and you've infused it with spirituality. And you've created, right? And that's what the world is all about, is taking the physical and infusing it with spirituality. And the better we get at that, of taking of the physical world and infusing it with spirituality, right? The more we do, right? The better we do that, right? The more we fulfill the purpose of this world. Right? Is to go, right? Is to take the physical and make it spiritual.
What's the prayer?
So the water is, you say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shahakol nihiyeh b'dvaro. Right? You say Baruch atah Adonai, which means God. What is? I'll teach you something interesting. Baruch atah Adonai. What does that mean? Blessed are you, Hashem. Can I ask you a question? Does God need your blessing?
No.
No. Okay. So what does it mean, Baruch atah Adonai? That's why I didn't use the Hebrew. That's why I didn't use the English. So they use the Hebrew.
Source of blessings to us.
So very good. So we say Baruch atah Adonai. What it means is, God, you who are the source of all blessings. Okay, the word Baruch in Hebrew, right, the blessed, really comes from the Hebrew word Bereishis. Now, does anyone know what a Bereishis is? Bereishis is a wellspring. Anyone know what a wellspring is? That's an English word.
Yeah.
Right? What's a wellspring? That's where the water comes out of the ground. It's a source of water. It's not a river. It's not a stream. Right? You follow a river up to its headwater. It will be a wellspring. There will be water coming out of the ground. I don't know, it might be a glacier river, whatever. But that's right. You go to a wellspring. That's where the water comes out. The word Baruch really means brecha. It's really the source of the water. So when we say Baruch atah Adonai, God, you are the source of all blessings. Right? Eloheinu, our God. Melech haolam, who is King of the universe. Right? And so we say Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shahakol nihiyeh b'dvaro, that everything exists by your word, or niyeh will become, becomes through your word, right? We're acknowledging God as what's called God is the master and the owner of everything in this world.
What shahakol mean?
That everything, right? And then that's whatever bracha you make, right? On bread made, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. Again, the same thing. God, you who are the source of all blessings, our God, King of the universe, right? Hamotzi brought out bread from the ground, right? But that's really the words Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Very powerful words if you ever stop and think about them, right? Because the words are it's really we're acknowledging God as being the source of all the blessings in the world, and then we say Eloheinu, you're my God, right? Our God, right? He's my God, personal melech haolam, King of the universe. Right? And then you go ahead and then you add on the piece of what you're saying. And
It's only half the story, though, right? Because God is also the source of all non-blessings as well. The source of evil.
What does that mean?
God is the source of everything.
Absolutely.
There's everything.
Everything.
Good and bad, He created it all.
Absolutely. Now then you have, and again, but bad isn't bad. Bad is because right what we think
It's only potential bad.
what we think is good and what we think is bad is kind of quite confusing, right? Because we don't know diddly squat. We think we do,
Yeah, we do.
and so we keep on telling God He's doing a bad job because we know nothing.
You're right.
So we're showing our ignorance.
You know, diddly squat. I like that diddly squat.
Right. That's what happens, right? We say, God, right? I know, but how could you do that? It doesn't make sense to me. And since since I know everything, so then of course, so then if it's me, so then I'm in charge, right? So you go ahead, right? You go and say, Baruch, right? But God, you are the source of all blessings, and that's why you make a blessing. And then everyone who hears a blessing, what do we say when we hear somebody make a blessing? Amen. What does the word amen mean?
So be it. So be it.
Right? So be it. Right? We're affirming what they're saying, and it's really an acronym for the word El Melech Ne'eman. El, which is God, Melech, the king, Ne'eman, the trustworthy. Right? The steadfast king. God who is steadfast, right? And we're basically giving thumbs up to the blessing that you're making. What's it? El, Melech, Ne'eman. Right? It's actually, if you look in your siddur right before the Shema, if you take a look, right, there's three little words that when you're praying by yourself, you say that. So those words, El, Melech, Ne'eman, if you take El, the first letter is an Aleph, Melech, the second letter is a Mem, Ne'eman, the third letter is a Nun, Aleph, Mem, Nun spells Amen. Right? Right? And that's where the word Amen comes from. And what's interesting is if you don't make a bracha, what happens when you don't make a bracha? The food is not permissible to you. It's considered as if you are stealing from God, right? Or in Hebrew, what we say, it is asur, it is forbidden to you. Once you make the blessing, what happens then? The food becomes permissible to you, right? Becomes the word mutar, right? Becomes permitted. What's interesting, you know what the word asur and mutar, what the source of those words are? It's pretty cool. The word asur means that it is tied. The word mutar means untied.
Untied?
Tied and untied. Right? When something is forbidden, it's tied. T-I-E-D. No, okay, not T-I-D-E. T-I-E-D. Tied, like a knot. Right? Because before you make the blessing on it, who owns it? God. So it's tied to God. Right? It's back up. It belongs to the spiritual world. As soon as you make a blessing, what do? You untie it, and now it becomes yours. And that's where the words asur and mutar come from. Right? Is give them right to tied and untied. And actually, every morning we said in a blessing, one of the blessings we make every morning is a blessing called matir asurim. And what does the word matir asurim mean? My God, you untie those that are bound. Right? You untie the one that is tied up. Right? We go to sleep, and that's sort of our bodies become tied up. Right? They go ahead and we're right. We're curled up. We're hiding, and then when we wake up in the morning, we have to be able to stretch and walk and be able to get around. Right. So all those things are being right. The idea of going ahead and of being right. We thank God every morning for going ahead and for right. We're going ahead and we're saying, God, you matra, assume you untie, right? You untie me that is bound, right? And then when we thank God for that. I don't know about you, and I'm getting out of bed in the morning. Sometimes the bone's a little creaky, a little achy, kind of like just, especially after Simchas Torah, right? We go ahead. Right? I'm sorry, I'm hoarse. I'm all the dancing and partying I've been doing the last 9 days, so you have to apologize, and I got to get ready for the next, couple of weeks. But that's right. And you get out of bed. My kids, I came home from shul on Simchas Torah, and they told one of my kids, he said, "Get me 3 Advil." They said, "Are you feeling okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm feeling fine." They said, "Well, why don't you just go to sleep? You don't need the medicine." He said, "Because I go to sleep without the Advil tomorrow morning, I'm going to be very creaky. I'm going to be, just kind of like just going in, just getting a little lubricant for the bones before we go ahead and do that." Now, but that's what we say, matir asur, mutar, and also something is forbidden. Then once you make the blessing, it becomes permissible. And that's really what happens is that you go ahead, you take a look at the word, it's an amazing thing, that all the food that we have, right, is that it belongs to God, right, and really everything, right, that we go ahead, it's God's, and then we go ahead and we get a chance to use it. And we get a chance, God is so graceful and just says, sure, you can use it, right, you could use my ear, you can use my water, you can use my earth to step on, right? You could go ahead. You could do all these things to go ahead and to use in this world. And all we need to do is just ask. I mean, when we say to God, just please, can I use it? Right? You just right. What do your parents always tell you? How do you ask nicely? Say please, right? And right. And what do you do after you use it? What do you say?
Thank you.
Thank you. There we go. That's all. So right, we drink some of his water. We say, please, can I have it? Then after we finish drinking it, what do we say?
Thank you.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God, for delicious water. Right? And right, that's the grace after meals, right? It's really nothing more than we wouldn't teach our children to just go ahead and to make sure that we're going ahead and that we are being grateful and graceful and kind to God. Right? Just like we would expect from anybody. Right? And that's what happens when we make the blessings. That's really what we're doing. So go here, we have the upper waters and we have the lower waters. And so we go ahead and we have the upper waters and the lower waters. And the upper waters want to flood. God says, no, stay down below. And that's where we get to eating salt. And this whole concept. Okay, fantastic. What's fascinating, if you take a look, And day number 2, it does not say, and God saw that it was good. If you take a look in day number 2, it does not say God it was good. If you take a look in day number 1, what does God say after He created the light? And God saw that
Light was good.
the light was good, right? On day number 2, does it say God saw that it was good?
No.
No. What's interesting, you'll take a note, and this I'll give you a little heads up. In day number 3, it says it twice. In day number 4, it says it once. Day number 5, it says it number 1. It says it once. Day number 6, it says once. Okay? So why does it not say that it was good on day number 2?
Because it's a separation.
Very good. Excellent. Right? Because day number 2 is a day when there was a separation. There was non-unity. The water was no longer one. And God says that's not good. And therefore, since on day 2, right, you have a day of separation, you took water that was one, and you split it into 2, God does not say, and it was good. Right? It's amazing, amazing lesson. Right? It's an amazing lesson of going ahead to make sure, right, that the world was all about us being, right, about unity, about becoming one. And if there's any separation, that takes away from the world being one.
Very good, Justin. Just telling Justin he's
Oh,
smart.
okay, good. So God called the firmament heaven. It was evening. It was morning. A second day. Okay, day number 3. We are just cruising along over here. You guys are really lucky today, and you actually got the whole day in quick there. Okay. Good. Day number 3. Kenny, want to read?
Sure. God said, "Let the waters beneath the heaven be gathered into one area, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called to the dry land earth, and to the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good.
Oh.
That's because it was finished.
Oh, very good, right? So very good. So right, and also, right, it says God only used His word, and it was good, right? That the world was good because, right, we use it when He finishes a whole act. So day 2, He started with the water, but He didn't finish with the water. He only went there and He finished with the water only on day 3. Right? He finishes with the water on verse number 10, and that's why then God says, and God saw that it was good because He finished with water. Now, interesting. What does He call the water?
Seas.
Seas with an S at the end. Okay? An S at the beginning and S at the end. Plural. Let me ask you a question. How many seas are there?
7.
Oh, you guys.
Not 7 seas?
Well, let me ask you a question. How do you know there are 7 seas?
Atlantic, Pacific, Indian.
There's
Indians and
one.
ocean.
Reservations.
More than 7.
Those are oceans.
Those are oceans, I see. So you only
No,
call
you're calling it 7 seas because, right, the famous, right, the sailing the 7 seas, right? Can I ask all you also a question? If I took you on a boat ride, if I took you on a cruise,
When?
No. Frankie, you're supposed to take your rabbi on a cruise. The rabbi's not supposed to take you on a cruise.
Okay.
But let's say you took me on a cruise.
Would do.
When? Okay, I'm sorry. Right? Okay, right. So we go on a cruise, right? And we go and we leave from Galveston. Okay? And we start cruising. We cruise through the Gulf of Mexico. And we exit the Gulf of Mexico into
Atlantic Ocean.
Caribbean's Atlantic Ocean. And then we head south. Where would we head south to? Where would we be going?
Indian Ocean?
No, we go south.
South is still in the
South.
Atlantic.
Still it's Atlantic. And let's say I told you, hang a right after Argentina.
Okay, now you're going to Pacific.
Now I'm going to Pacific Ocean. So, and now can I ask you a question? Where's the line between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean?
Tasmania.
There is none.
There is none. Thank you, Shara. There we go. Shara, you have to talk nicely.
So
You're on tape now forever. I said, you should know.
Of course, it's on the internet.
Yes, that's right. you should
Wanna
know.
go viral.
You should know. You should know this is such a. It's such a in Hebrew it's called a Musar Haskel. It's such a deep message. Right? You realize that every word you say is being recorded for posterity. You know, and anyone could go right in the 100 years from now. They'll go on the web and they'll just download and they'll be hearing you talking. Right? They'll be hearing you giving a class like it's class is going on. I said, you know, at the end of the day, every word we say is being recorded, even when you're not on Facebook Live. Gasp, right? Every word we say is being recorded and videotaped by God's camera crew. Right? And when you get upstairs to heaven, every word and every action we say, right, will be played back for you. Right? And so, yeah. It's like scary, right? And so, like, you just have to, right, just kind of just remember that, right? And at that point in time, I think our actions and our language and everything else that we do will have to be have to clean up quite a lot. But we just have to remember that, and then that's why this thing is really, it's kind of quite a scary thing. You know, like, do I want to say this now? You know, you go through life. Am I saying the right thing? So we go ahead and we have now. Right? So there's no lines between the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean. Right? So why do we call them two different oceans? They're the same ocean. Is there any line between the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico? No. Is there any line between the Atlantic Ocean and the Antarctic Ocean?
No.
No. Any, right? So why are you calling them different oceans?
Because cartographers physically did that. And someone named it.
So it's a cartographer's fault. Except there's one problem. The Torah was written before there were cartographers. So why does God call it seas in the plural when really it seems to be all one big sea?
They serve different purposes.
What?
They serve different purposes?
Getting warm?
But Rabbi, they are not even connected.
But no, all the water is
Oh,
connected.
It's connected?
Yeah.
Seas.
The different temperature.
Okay, go ahead. Okay. So the answer is water isn't the same water, even though to me and you, it looks like water, right? Right, so, okay, good, right? That is different. It supports different lives. Okay, good. And so Rashi says, your Atlantic salmon is different than your Pacific salmon.
No kidding.
Right? And therefore, some people like Atlantic salmon, some people like Pacific salmon. So and why? Because they taste different.
Yeah.
Right? And so therefore, since the taste, even though it might be the same fish, but one's from the Atlantic and one's from the Pacific, right? And so therefore, since they're different tastes, so therefore you see that the oceans themselves, even though it all looks like water, are all different waters. Right? And so that's why it's called seas, right? Because in the plural, because there are different seas. Now I'm going to teach you something that is truly amazing, okay? Truly something that always bothered me, and then I saw this, and then it really bothered me, but I at least had the answer. And it is a deep idea. Why is all the earth covered by water?
Why is all the earth?
Why is all the earth surrounded by water? Every place you go on the earth, there's water all around it.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because at one point it was all water.
Okay, but why does it mean that water has to surround everything?
We use water to clean.
Water is
Okay.
a source of life, right?
So good. I like rivers. I could drink the water. Right?
Can't drink an ocean.
You can't drink an ocean. So why?
It's
So
a
you go
life
sailing.
source, isn't it? So
What?
you live
So
in
you go sailing.
So you could go sailing. That sounds good. Right?
Ridiculous.
So why? Right? So why? Right? Why is the water? Right? Why is the water all over the earth?
Because Hashem gave him blessings.
Hashem give a blessing that what?
Because it got separated from the earth forgot. I forgot that. He gave him a blessing because.
So let me tell you why the earth is surrounded by water. I didn't know. I mean, one reason I had was actually, it's quite fascinating. How would it take you if you wanted to walk from New York to London? And let's say there was no water. Let's say the ocean was like all sucked up. How would it take you to walk from New York to London?
How long?
How long?
Long time.
Why?
You got to go down into the valleys.
Right, there'd be peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys, right? It would take you forever to walk. Right? So what does God do? So God goes ahead and God fills it all up with water and makes it you just sail right across the top. So I thought that was very kind. That God helps us move around. Right? He creates it all with water and kind of makes it that we could just kind of just sail right across.
It's also reminding us that we can be sunk.
So now, listen to this. Says the Yalkut Shimoni. Yalkut Shimoni is one of the Midrashim, one of the oral law. This is an amazing idea. It says that it says it's a parable. It says he gave a parable. It says imagine you had a king that ruled many provinces. And one time the people in the province weren't behaving so nicely the way they should. So what does he do? He sends his army around the province, right, to remind them if they don't shape up, he's going to ship them out, right? He says, so too is the water that God puts around the world, right, around each of the continents or each of the places to remind us that if we don't shape up, we get shipped out. Isn't it an unbelievable idea? Harvey? I mean, it just right, a lot of tsunamis. I mean, just an amazing idea. An amazing idea of why the world is surrounded by water. And that's just truly truly an amazing idea. Really just something quite special.
Don't
Yeah.
forget, in the history of humankind, they always had ships and boats. They always floated on the water no matter what happened. They always used it for the purpose.
Sure. Because people knew it's interesting. I always said, how did the first man get smart enough to do that? Like where did that come from? Remember, it just is very interesting, right? It's where we use what God has put in the world. So, but that's why there are seas, and that's why there are seas in the plural, right? Seas are in the plural because again, the seas, right? All the seas in one place are right. Your salmon in one the Atlantic salmon is different than your Pacific salmon. So even though they might look the same, they're just all water. Right, but the answer is, they taste different. There's a whole different consistency, and therefore there are all sorts of different, right? There are all sorts of different ideas. Right, but that's why the Torah goes and the Torah calls it seas, right, in the plural, right, because there are different seas. Okay, good. Okay, verse number 11. Okay, go ahead, continue.
God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, herb yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit each after its kind, containing its own seed on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, herbage yielding seed after its kind, and trees yielding fruit, each after its seed.
Each containing
its seed after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day.
Okay, so tell me what happened on day number 3.
He made vegetation.
He made vegetation. Okay, how did he make vegetation?
Brought it forth.
He brought it forth. Good. And what did the land listen to God?
Rabbi, sorry, you're explaining it wrong. It was all creation. He created.
Right.
He didn't make. Creation is different than making.
Okay. Well, so 2 things. Number 1, actual creation, which means creating something out of nothing, that was only done on the first day. Right? Only on the first day did God create something out of nothing. Okay, everything, right? God was creating something out of nothing. The rest of the days of creation, He was making it from something and just turning it into something else. Okay, creation, right? The Hebrew word bara, right? Bereishis bara, the beginning of God's creating. The word bara means creating something out of nothing. Only on day 1 did He create something out of nothing. right? He created a universe, right? He created matter. He created the world. But after that, it's just taking the different matters and shaping it into different forms. Right? So it says, so God made, right? So God made, he says, go make fruit, right? So what does he say at that point in time? What did God tell? Did the earth listen to God?
Yeah.
So he made it for Adam and Hava. What
Mm,
did he make the vegetation for?
the whole world? To make it look pretty.
Before us it was Adam and Hava. That's all. That was the.
Adam and Chava, this is day number 3. Adam and Eve don't show up for another 3 more days.
But that was supposed to be the. That was supposed to be the last, the first and the last one.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You kidding?
No,
Scott wouldn't be around. You think God created the world for Scott? Heck, he created it for me. I like nature. I like looking at nature. Right? So I like looking at it. Right? I like looking at it. Right? And seeing it.
So what's the point of the apple? And
The apple?
The apple.
I want to tell you something. You want to hear a story about the apple? Tell the story about an apple. One is amazing.
I mean, why did we get tricked? Why?
Okay,
Everything is, all the negativity started from there.
all the what?
Negativities.
Oh, what apple? You talking about the apple in the garden?
Yeah.
In the Garden of Eden? Okay, first of all, it wasn't an apple. Okay, so Adam and Eve did not eat from the apple, but we'll get to that. You're jumping ahead to chapter 3. We're still in chapter 1. You gotta wait a couple weeks till we get there. But I want to tell you something cool about an apple. It's really cool, right? So God makes an apple. Just explaining the engineering that went into this apple. So how does an apple tree get planted?
You dig a hole, you put a seed in there.
You dig a hole in the seed, right? But no, what happened was God wanted to make sure that the apple trees would get spread around the world. So what do? He made it that the flesh of the fruit would taste good. So you take an apple and you go off to work, right? You go, you pull out your lunch, you pull out your apple, right? Okay, hypothetically, right? What is the apple? But okay, right? You pull out the apple, you eat the apple, and what are you left with the apple? Left the core with the seeds. And what do you do with that? You drop it on the ground. And what happens? You get dropped on the ground.
You
get a new apple tree, right? So God made it that it would be transported and be able to be planted. Now, how do you know when an apple's ready to eat?
It's right.
It changes colors. Right? When the apple gets nice and red, for the red delicious apples. Right? So the apple changes color so you know when it's ready to eat. Is that not the coolest thing? Right? Imagine, right? And actually it's funny, they're actually starting to do packaging like that, right? That the packaging is working. That if the food inside turns bad, the packaging will turn bad. Right? It's actually funny. Right? The packaging will turn bad. And so that's what you have. You have all this the packaging for the apple, it turns red when it's ready to eat. Is that not just the coolest God you know? Is that not like wow, that is amazing?
And not only that, it also multiplies.
Right? It's God.
It never ends.
Right? I mean, God made it. Right? One apple makes how many apple trees? One apple makes how many apple seeds? Amazing stuff. How right God, if you think about it, how God made this whole, right? Acorn. How does God make acorn trees get planted? Squirrels carry them out and they hide them for their. And then what happens? The squirrels forget about them, or they become roadkill, and all the ones they forgot they get wiped out. And guess what you have? More acorn trees. God is just like amazing. Like actually, you look at creation. Creation is one of the most awesome things. But let's go back to this. So it goes in and God says He's going to create a world. And what does He tell the world to do? Sprout vegetation.
But it doesn't.
What do you mean it doesn't?
Well, it says later that nothing sprouted until Adam came along.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So that might have been in the Garden of Eden. I'm not sure the rest of the world was like that anyway. Okay, but number 2. But does the earth listen to God?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is no.
Really?
I want you to reread these 2 verses again. I'm going to reread verse number 11 and verse number 12. And the English is very hard, and I apologize. It's a subtlety. that in the English it's very hard to pick up. But go ahead, try see if you can pick it up. Read number 11. Read verse 11 again.
The trunks of the trees should have been fruit as well.
Aha. So very good. So read verse number 11. Okay, very good.
God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, herbage yielding seed, fruit trees yielding fruit on each after its kind, containing its own seed on the earth. And it was so.
Okay. So it told him to do a fruit tree yielding fruit. Okay, and what happens in verse number 12?
And the earth brought forth vegetation yielding seed after its kind, and the trees yielding fruit.
And trees yielding, say, and fruit, trees yielding fruit, or just as in the Hebrew it's clear actually, right? What is that? When it says, right, it says, and fruit trees bearing fruit, God told the earth that the trees themselves should taste like fruit. Besides providing fruit, right? The tree itself should taste like fruit. And that's what God tells the tree. I want you to itself taste like fruit, and I want you to yield fruit. And what does the earth do? Verse number 12. Only the trees yielding fruit. Only the tree yielded fruit, but it did not itself taste like fruit. Right? The tree itself did not taste like fruit. You got it? Right? The tree itself did not taste like fruit.
How could that be?
And
how can the earth not obey?
How could the earth not obey God?
Really?
That's an amazing question.
Because God wills something to be, it is.
Amazing question. I had this question for many years. Many years. Now, when you have a great question like that, you know what you do?
Go to your rabbi.
You're going to your rabbi. Right? Because, like when you have a rabbi who's a great Torah sage, which I'm lucky to have had, you go ahead and you just ask them any questions, and then you just stand by and catch the pearls of wisdom that come out of their mouth. Right? You get that right? You just catch them. Right? You try not to talk too much. Right? You ask the question, and then you just let them talk, and you just catch the pearls that come out. I remember when I was in yeshiva in Israel, so by Rabbi Tzvi Kushlowski was my rabbi, and what happened was I once ate lunch at his house. So Friday night we used to eat in the yeshiva, and then Shabbos lunch we used to eat at his house. And one time a friend and I, we decided, that's it, we're gonna bum a lunch meal off of him. Right, we're going to go for him for Shabbat lunch. We're going to get ourselves invited. We're going to crash his party and then go and join him for lunch. So we asked him if it was okay if we come. He said, sure, no problem. And I think he tried to avoid us a little bit, but we didn't let him off the hook. And he said, okay, you can come. And so what we did was we went and we wrote down all our questions that we had, right? So we could just ask him the questions and just let him roll, just let him talk and get the answers. So the good news is that he hasn't been in Dallas in a long time. But when we first came here, 25 years ago, he used to come to Dallas once a year. And so one time I had the privilege of spending some time with him, of driving him around, and what happened was I asked him this question. And he told me the following answer, which I thought was unbelievable. He said, where does man come from? Earth, right? Man comes from earth. Now, and what did God make man different than all the other animals in creation?
Free will.
He gave us free will. That we could choose, right? You could choose to listen or choose not to. Right? He says, and so since man was going to be made from the dirt, right? It's a combination of this dirt and this breath of, right, this life, this soul that God breathes into the body, right? And creating a person that has free will. There has to be in the DNA of our physicality, of our body, of the dirt, the ability to make a free will decision. And the only way to make a free will decision is to be able to not listen. So therefore, the earth expressed itself that it had a free will decision. How? By going ahead and making, instead of a fruit tree yielding fruit, only a tree yielding fruit. Right?
It did that on purpose.
It did that on purpose
Wow.
to show us, right? To show us, right, that it had the free will, right? That it had the free will. So when man would be made from the earth, we would know we would have the ability, we'd have the capability of making a free will decision.
Not making fruit trees, but making trees that bear fruit.
Yeah.
The earth was punished, wasn't it?
Ooh, very good. Okay, that was okay, excellent. Sippy. She said the earth was punished.
How was it punished?
How was it punished? Go ahead, Sippy. Now you're putting on the spot. Because over here you see there's no record of it being wrong. There's no record of a consequence. Right, so where is there a consequence then for the earth for not listening to God?
Earthquakes.
Where?
Earthquakes.
Who?
Where?
Earthquakes.
Oh, earthquakes. No. That's earth, right, that's punishment to earth. That's a punishment to man. Right, where? So if you take a look in chapter 3, after man and woman get punished in the Garden of Eden, it says the earth gets, right, thorns and thistles will grow from the earth. Right, so now the earth, since man got punished, then at that point in time, the earth gets punished as well. Which, by the way, fits perfectly into this idea that I'm telling you. Right, because once man and woman used their free will incorrectly, right, once they went ahead and they used their free will to disobey God,
They were
punished, and not only they were punished, but their physicality, which came from the earth, was punished too. That it all happened at the same place. Right? And so that's what happened, right? Because anytime you disobey God, what happens?
You're punished.
But what do you mean when you get punished?
There's a consequence.
Thank you. Much better. I don't like the word punish. God is not sitting up there waiting for fine. When is Bentzi Epstein going to do something wrong? Bam! Smacking me on the head. Okay, that's not how God does it. What does God do? God sits up there waiting to find Bentzi Epstein doing something right.
Yes.
And then you know what he says?
Good job.
Good job.
Yay! Woo! Right? He did something right. Right? And what's our job?
Do something.
Make God keep him cheering all the time. Right? And so what happens when we disobey God, why does God want us to do what he wants us to do?
So he can be happy.
Because he's going to be happy or because we can be happy? Because we'll be happy. Remember, the commandments are for us.
Happy as a giver.
Right? And so the more we do, the more happier we become. Right? So remember, the commandments are for us and not for God. Right? They're for us to become better people. So every time we miss a commandment, what happens? Who are we hurting? What? We're hurting ourselves. Right? We're hurting ourselves. And so what happens is it becomes, at that point in time, there becomes a consequence to our actions. Right? There's a consequence to our actions. And those consequences to our actions that happen when we do something, right? Those are the consequences that sometimes we're not so thrilled with. And truthfully, who do we blame when that happens? God. Who should we blame? Ourselves. Right? Did God not say this was going to happen? God, why'd you do this to me? Right? Did I not tell you that something might happen if you don't do that? Oh, right? And that's
so our consequences are innate in our actions.
Right. So that's very interesting. So our consequences are innate to our actions, and really our actions drive what happens. You know, and we have to recognize that, right? That our actions drive what happens to us, and it's nothing. It's not God. God's not right. We blame God for it when all God is doing is trying to help us. Remember, there's a great line you should never forget. Okay, I'll tell you now. Tell you this line. Never ever forget this line. Most important line in the world. Hakol ma da'avid rachmana.
Hakol
ma da'avid rachmana. Whatever God does, letava avid, he does it for our benefit. You think about that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Right? Everything that God does is always for our benefit. Right? Because even when there's a consequence to our actions, Right? So what is that consequence supposed to remind us of? Not to do it again. You run a red light and you get broadsided at the intersection. Right? That's the consequence. What does that consequence teach you?
Don't run red lights.
Certainly when another car is coming. Right? Don't run red lights! Right? That's the consequence. There's a consequence to our actions. Right? And really, God, all He wants for us is to be happy, right? And to do good for us. That's all God wants to do. Right? Don't think for a second there's anything else God wants anything else besides that. And everything that God does is for our benefit. It's the most amazing idea. Right? And whenever you get stuck and you're wondering why something's happening, go back to this concept. Everything that happens is for our benefit. God, whatever God does is for our benefit. Right? We just have to figure out how and why. Right? But it's for our benefit. Right? That's serious. It's just such an important concept to keep front and center. Right? Everything is for our own benefit. Right? You know, we may not become the right person. We write. It's who was that in discussion with? That discussion with somebody, I think over Shabbos, over this past weekend. Right? And so I said to the person, I said, if this didn't happen to you, I said, where would you be now? He says, I'd be in the Bahamas. I said, doing what? He says, with my yacht and boat, my deck, 20-year-old secretary. I said, what would you do? He said, that's what I'd be doing now. I said, right. I said, and what are you doing now? He said, well, I'm hanging out with you. I said, I'm not 20 years old, I ain't no secretary. I said, all right. I said, but what happens? I said, but now you finally understand life. And I said, you could either be, right? I said, if you would have life the way you want it to be, I said, your life would be totally devoid of meaning.
Yes.
And understanding.
Yes.
Right? I said, is that what you want? I said, the sad thing is that it took you to get to this point in order to figure that out. Right? It took you kind of like it goes ahead. I said, but understand, it's all consequences. And all that happens. Right? And that's really our job, is to understand that everything that God does for us is for our benefit. The most amazing idea. Because then you recognize that everything that happens, not only should you not be unhappy with it, what are you supposed to be? Happy, because it's for my benefit. Some things we figure out, some things takes a little longer to figure out. Some things are a lot longer to figure out. Right? But it's figuring out the end game. It's figuring it all out. That's what it's all about. Right? And the more understanding we have, the more godliness we have, the more we're able to get it. Right? That's really the key. Right? It's figuring it out. Just amazing. So the earth goes ahead and the earth doesn't listen to God, right? The earth told the earth to produce a tree that itself tasted like fruit, as well as a fruit. And the tree does not do that. The tree produces a tree that bears fruit, but doesn't taste like itself. Right?
It tastes like bark.
It tastes like bark, right? Yeah. It tastes like bark.
So why did God say it was good?
Aha! Excellence. So why is it good? Because God knew it wasn't going to produce it, right? God knew what the earth was going to do. Right?
Why is that good?
Why? That's very good. You tell me.
Because then you have humans.
Say it again.
You have humans.
You have humans. And what's the purpose of the world?
Humans.
Right? Never forget, we are the purpose of the world. Right? Human beings are the purpose of the world. So in order to create humans, and what makes a human different than an animal? Free will. Right? We have free will. Right? That's all that differentiates us. All that separates us. Right? Is that we have free will.
We have the ability to be friends with God.
Right? Okay. We have the ability to serve God.
Well,
And create a relationship with Him.
That's friendship.
Right? Okay, that's yeah. Yes.
Rabbi, but the earth, the water, they all have obligation to God too.
Absolutely.
That's why we pray on them every time. Make sure they also stand up too.
You want to hear what the Talmud says? Talmud says an amazing line. It says the sun rises and the sun sets, right? Which is really the sun just circling the earth. You know what it's doing when it's rising, as it's moving through the world?
What?
It's singing praise to God. You know what the ocean's doing as the tides come in and the waves come in? Singing praise to God. There was a great rabbi who went for a walk with a student in the forest. And the student walked by and just just ripped a branch, ripped a leaf off the tree. And his rabbi turned and said, "What'd you do?" He says, "What's the big deal? I just took a leaf." He said, you just took the drums out of the orchestra." Right? You took the drums out of the orchestra. The whole world is singing praise to God. Is sitting there and singing praise to God. Right?
The world doesn't make the ground doesn't make a mistake?
No.
The water doesn't make mistakes?
Oh no, not at all.
So why is there hurricane? Why is there waves?
I don't know if I'll tell you why, but you don't know if you want to know. The answer is because sometimes us humans need some reminders that there's a God in this world. Right? It's fascinating, right? We said in right Hal, we just finished saying Hal for 9 days straight, right over Sukkot. And one of the phrases that we say, which come from Psalms, "Mi mizrach hashemesh ad mevo'o," right, from the rising of the sun till its setting, Muhulo Shem Adonai. And God's name is praised. Right? It's just right. The whole. If you could imagine, if you could attune yourself, and you should do this one time. I'll tell you one thing to do, which I happen to find really super cool. Sometimes when I walk home on Friday night, and you just hear the trees, the wind rustling in the trees, and you can just hear the whole creation singing to God. You got to tune in. You got to stop talking for a minute, right? But you could just hear the whole creation singing and praising God, because that's what the creation does. And the creation goes ahead, and the creation is just singing praise to God, is praising God. Right? And now, hopefully, we as the king of the universe should crown that singing with truly great song, right? With true singing and true rejoicing. The sad part is sometimes a little bit AWOL, right? We're just not there, right? And the creature that is the most sophisticated and the crowning jewel of the world, right? We don't show up, right? And the orchestra is missing its maestro, right? Because it's interesting. I'll tell you a beautiful story. You know the story of Joshua when he went and he fought and he had to stop the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone know? Right. He was in Givon. Mm-hmm. What happened was he had the big battle. And what happened was it was close to Shabbos, and the enemy was running away. They were going to get away. So what does Joshua do?
Stop Shabbos.
He said, "Stop, son. Son, stop right there. S-U-N. Stop right there." Right? And the moon, be'emak ayalon. You stop right there. Sun and moon, stay exactly where you are. Right? So we can finish off the battle. And the discussion, Talmud, how long the sun actually stood for. Right? Was it 48 hours, 36 hours, 24 hours, 12 hours? Actually an interesting discussion, how long it stopped so they can finish the job. Actually interesting, by the way, then some of the people were too far away for Joshua to reach them, so you know what he did? No, he called in an airstrike. And do you know what was airstrike?
Meteors.
Do you remember the hail that God made a plague in Egypt?
Yeah.
Right? Remember the hail?
Fiery hail.
Right? So there was some of it left over. So Joshua called it in to get those guys. Okay, it's amazing. It says the miracles that Joshua, the only land of Israel, were like greater than the miracles leaving Egypt. Amazing stories. And this is what happens. But how does the prophet say that Joshua stopped the sun? What is the Hebrew word? Shemesh begivon dom. Right? V'yirech, right? Emek Ayalon, right? Right? Shemesh begivon dom. The sun that is in Givon, dome, they translate as to be silent. As to be, it's to stop. Except, how do you say stop in Hebrew? Atzor. So what should Joshua have said? Shemesh begivon atzor. Sun in Givon, stop. But it doesn't say that.
Because when it stops moving, it stops singing praise to God. So it tells us to be silent.
Well, you're right. I mean, when someone comes and says, "The Bible's not true," I say, "Why not?" He says, "Because if the sun would stop moving, everyone would fly off the earth. Like happy to stop the earth, rotating." I said, he made the miracle that the sun can stop. He said he can make the miracle that we don't fly off of it. But what happens? Why does it say Shemesh begivon dom? Why does it say the sun in Givon should be silent? He says, stop singing praise to God, because God just handed us an incredible victory. And therefore, it's time for the Jewish people to sing praise to God and thank God for the miracle that He gave us. It says, son, be silent from saying praise, because now it's our turn. Angels in heaven sing praise to God. But you know what has to happen before they can sing praise to God? The Jewish people on earth have to sing praise to God before they can go. Right? That's how the world is supposed to be. Right? We're supposed to recognize, and your point, which is very, very well put, and is that why is it a good thing? Why is it good that the earth didn't listen to God and produced a tree that went ahead and produced it was the tree itself was supposed to taste like a fruit, and it doesn't? And yet God calls it good? The answer is because God had to create man, and God gave free will to man, and therefore man is the crowning achievement of the world. Right? We're the apex of the food chain. Right? And what do we have to do? Right? We have to go ahead and we have to have a whole way that the world works. We have to recognize that it's all about praising God. And then going ahead and coming into a state, because really if we become really good at this, right, we will recognize God in everything. And if you go ahead, and you recognize that it's all about God. Right? It's all God all the time. And you're able to live in that way. Right? Where you see God in everything in the world, you go ahead, you can become this most masterful, godly person. Right? Because you go through life just seeing God. Right? Yes.
Okay, so if the trees and the sun and the moon and everything in the world praises God,
right?
It must be that God wants that praise, right?
No.
They don't have free will. Trees do not have free will.
Correct.
The
right?
moon doesn't have free will.
Correct.
So it must be ordered by God that they praise God.
It must be what?
It must be ordered by God that they praise God.
Why?
That's what I'm asking you.
Oh! So what's the job of the angels?
Praise God.
To teach man how to praise God.
So that means God must want us to pray.
Oh, why does God want us to pray?
For our own good.
Because for us, so we can have a relationship with Him.
Yeah, but the trees don't get anything from praising God.
Exactly. And yet they praise God. So what about man, who gets everything from light, from God?
Oh, I see.
Right? And doesn't teach us that we're supposed to sit there and just praise God. Right? We're supposed to live in this state of connectivity to God. And the most amazing place. Right? You understand that we're supposed to be in a place of connection and of just zoned into God. Right? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if you actually lived a life like that?
Well, could be understood that the people in the desert, they basically pray all day long.
This is very interesting, right? So the people, right, the Jewish people in the desert for 40 years, we lived in a altered state of human existence. Right? Remember, we're eating manna from the heaven, we're drinking water from a rock, right? We're living right just in a whole state of just incredible, right, godliness. Let me give you a challenge. I'm going to give you all a challenge.
Sure.
You up to it?
Yeah, beat yourself up.
Okay, no. I want you to take 15 minutes. 15 minutes. 15 minutes. Okay? I want you to take 15 minutes. Not now.
No, I know, for later.
For later. And I want you to try to look around at everything that you see and acknowledge the godliness that's in there. Okay, let me repeat that. I want you to take 15 minutes and I want you to try to acknowledge everything, the godliness in everything that you see. So, for example, you take a look, you see water. Without water, we all die. Right? What are we? 80% water, 95% water, 98%, 97% water. What a miracle, right? Miracle thing, right? And we can process the water, we drink it, we process it, right? We go ahead, right? It quenches our thirst, right? And we get water that we can drink. Amazing. Thank you, God, for the water. Plastic. Where does plastic come from? Oil. Where does oil come from? The ground, the whole oil industry. Everything that created there, why? So we get a plastic so to hold our water. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to hold the water. Right? Okay. The paper. Where did paper come from? That might also be plastic.
Trees.
Right? The wrapper on your bottle. Trees. Right? Where does that come from? Make the trees grow. Who waters the trees? Right? Right? Who makes sure the trees make it? Who keeps insects away from the trees? Who makes the trees go to be able to a place where you could harvest them and get trees? Sheetrock, lighting, ceiling fans, metal, right? Humans. What are you breathing, by the way? Air. And who gave you the air?
God.
Try going out of space.
How come we don't pray for the air we
The
can
most
breathe?
important is the ink.
And you're right. You take a look. You take a look at the world. You take a look at the world, and try spending 15 minutes and just thanking God for everything that we have, and appreciating the godliness that's there. And try doing that once a day, right? And just thank God. You talk about earthquakes. Do you thank God for the earth you stand on? Do you thank God that the earth doesn't shake more? Do you? I make a blessing every morning thanking God for the earth that I'm standing on. Right? Right? God, you spread out the earth over the water. Right? We thank God for that.
But without the wisdom of the humankind, none of this will exist.
Right? Again, if you actually stop and think and appreciate God and go ahead and recognize God for all the goodness that He does every second you're seeing. How are you even seeing anything? Right? How many nerve endings do you have in the back of one eye? Actually 1.5 million, I think.
Okay.
It's 3 million together. And how many of those 1.5 million nerves are you willing to give up?
I already gave up a bunch.
No, He took them away. Maybe we didn't appreciate them enough.
Well, maybe I'm supposed to learn something.
Right? How many lenses do you have in your eyes?
2.
How many skin? What about your skin? What about your just think about it. Your body. You know, in one body, not even mine. I need to take my Chaim Zev, who's 10 years old. You know how many blood vessels he has in his body? If you lie them end to end, It will circle the earth 3 times. The entire earth. In one human being. And you have a little pump in your body called the heart. 4 chambers. Do you remind your heart to breathe every second? And yet your heart is pumping. How many times a day? How many times a second? Once every second, right? Hopefully, if you're in good shape, right? Right? If you're not in good shape, it's 2 or 3 times a second. Right? And then, by the way, and how do you get around? So you have a horse. In the olden days, well, you're in Texas, so you can sell horses, right? You go ahead and it's a horse, but a horse needs to have grass to eat, right? So who makes the grass grow? And who makes all the animals that are part of the food chain to make the grass grow? And who makes the bees? And who eats the bees? Right? Just because we need them, so God creates a whole food chain behind it, a support system to go ahead and to do that. Do we really stop and think for a minute? Right? Like how an amazing, incredible, fantastic, wow, that's there.
Who do we blame for not doing that?
Right.
I think we live in the this culture society that a lot needs to be done from the government. We, for instance, the way we've been raised, like you're talking now,
right.
More than time to time, when we sit down at the hotel, your eyes, how God made it,
right.
And then we learn that from growing. And I prefer to, some of kids American in a society,
right.
When even though the parent, when you mention things like that, there was you're crazy, you see, and I was reading one of the book of Jonathan Sarna, who is trying to put the American Judaism together, and he mentioned something that I was planning to write Jewish people when they moved from Europe to American,
right.
And then he said, and then one of the friend Kollel told him, no, I can give you the whole book right now. He said, when they came to America, they stopped acting like a Jewish, but they acting like a Goyim. I mean, the Gentiles.
Right.
They don't recognize the...
No, so we need to get to a place and where we're going ahead and where we recognize all the good that God does. It's an incredible thing. It's just truly, and if you take 15 minutes a day, right, and just stop and take 15 minutes once and just thank God for all the wonderful things, right, that exist in this world and that He made for us.
It is beautiful.
Beautiful, just incredible, right, and be grateful for that. And all this is, and God doesn't need us telling Him how wonderful it is. We need God, and so therefore God says, "I'll let you praise me." And even though, my friends, as much as you think you know, and as much as you'll be thankful for God, you're like the 2-year-old. I'm a 2-year-old saying that. Not about you guys, but right, meaning that we really don't even appreciate it. It's funny. I have a cousin, so she's an anesthesiologist. So she told me, she said, Bentzi, she says, you'll never appreciate a baby being born healthy. She says, I'm a doctor, and she says, when you learn about all the things that can go wrong, she says, you'll be so shocked at all the things that go right. Right? 99.99.
How often it happens.
And how often it happens, right? And how often it happens. She says, and just do we appreciate it? Do we thank God for it? Do we acknowledge God for it? Right? And God gave us the free will. When we have our free will, we could do what we want.
So are there any other times in the Torah where the earth expresses its free will again?
That's a great question. When the earth expresses its free will. Where the earth expresses its free will. It's a good question.
Or was this the one time?
It's funny. I think there's one time I would say when man, Yeah, I don't. It's a good question. Now, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Okay, off the top of my head, I can't think of any. Right? You know, you kind of find, right? Because again, you know, you know, in Christianity has this concept of this fallen angel, the one who fights God, right? And Judaism says that's no way, no how. God creates an angel and gives life to an angel. So an angel can't fight God. Right? You know what I'm saying? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's no such concept like that. As Norm says, the evil inclination is on God's payroll. Right? And right, everything that happens in the world is controlled by God. Right? Period.
Are there fallen angels?
No, what does that even mean? I don't even understand that concept.
Just a phrase I've heard.
Yeah, and it's not a Jewish, it's not a Jewish expression.
Yeah, you have the Yitzhara, which is an internal thing. But you have to have the external possibility, which is what Satan is. Without Satan, you know, if a guy cuts me off in traffic.
Ooh,
right,
I'm going to get him.
that arouses,
I'm going to teach him a lesson.
That arouses my Yitzhara, right?
Right? No.
It's still, he had to cut me off in traffic.
No.
He hadn't done that.
That was the Yitzhara. Right? And now it gave you an opportunity to become a human being.
So you're telling me the Yitzhara exists outside of me as well as in me?
Yeah, sure. Right, to go ahead to create, to go ahead to create a challenges for us, which then give us the opportunity to become godly or not.
So you don't believe God created the Satan?
Of course He did.
That's the Yitzhara.
You're right. I agree with that 100%.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
But he's on God's payroll.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Right. He's on God's payroll.
He rules over him?
Of course he does.
His
His job. You know what the Sutton's job is? You know what the Sutton's job is? Is to test us to see if we're going to go ahead and we're going to listen to God or not. Are we going to control our anger? Or are we not going to control our anger? Right? Remember, when everyone comes right, you know, it's so funny. Somebody comes to the obnoxious and get in your face, right? And what do you just want to do?
Grind him.
Right? Punch him out, shoot his lights out, do something, right? And you know what he is? That is God testing you to see how nicely you're going to smile.
So some get more Tesla.
And you say, oh, thank you so much. That, you know, the nice calm voice, and thank him. Right? Well, I said, well, you give me a chance to work on my midos, right? To work on my attributes, right? Am I going right? How I'm going to react to you?
But some people get less tests of that kind than others.
Right. You know why? Because every human being is different, and God gives each and every one of us the test that we personally need. So we get exactly the test that we need. And don't worry about passing a test. You know why? You never have to worry about passing a test. Because you keep on getting it. Until you pass. Right? It's called pass the right play the
You gotta
class.
pass it over and over again.
Right? No, you don't have to pass it over again as long as it's a challenge for you. Once it becomes no longer a challenge, then you no longer have to pass it because it's no longer, you just move on. Right? You get to the next test.
So people who get less of this type of test, they are more perfect.
No, not necessarily, because every person is unique. Every individual is a unique person and unique makeup, and God gives each and every one of us exactly what we need.
Right. But this test is a lot of stress.
Oh yeah, no, it could. So as long as you're getting stressed about it, you failed the test.
Right.
I'll give you an example. that happened with me. It's a very fascinating example. It took place. Oh, it took place. I know exactly when it took place. It took place. My son, I was Binyamin. I was getting married one day. It took place when he was 14 years old, and he was in yeshiva in Baltimore, and he wanted to go check out yeshiva in New York. And when that was Saturday night, I decided I was going to fly up Sunday morning to take him. Okay. I booked a ticket at 1 a.m. for a 6 a.m. flight. Okay? It was, I think it was Transair, what's it called? Trans-American, the one who Southwest bought out from Atlanta. Okay, booked it at 1 a.m. So at 6 a.m. I had to leave for the airport at a 6 a.m. flight. I had to leave the airport at, I figured 4:30. Okay, right? Because it's I have to go through security. All right, so this is taking place. It's taken 9 years ago. And what I always do, what I always try to do is always try to pack the night before I go to bed, right before a flight. So that way, if I wake up a few minutes late, I could kind of still get out the door and be okay. So I went to bed like 1:30. I had to get up at 1:30. I get up at 4:30. 4:30? Yeah, 4:30. I'd be out of the house. We get up at 4:30, get the house 4:40, get to the airport 5 o'clock, be okay. I called up, they had the valet parking because they just started valet parking. I called them up and got a machine. They weren't open between 12 and 5. So I said, listen, I'm coming. He's like, I'm going to meet me at the gate. I go to sleep. I wake up at 5:05.
Oh my gosh.
In my house.
Oh my gosh.
And a 6 o'clock flight. And remember, I didn't remember, it was AirTran, that's what it was, AirTran. They always had like the gates like E36. So it wasn't even like you still had to, even when you get through security, you still got to walk like 16 gates. Woke up at 5:05. I said, and there was no reason to walk. What happened was I set my alarm for 4:30, but I set it for 4:30 p.m. instead of 4:30 a.m.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's it.
And somehow, right, i.e. God, I woke up at 5:05. I was in the car by 5:07. And I'm running to the airport. So I call up the valet people. I said, did you get my message from last night? They said, no. I said, okay, my flight's at 6. I'll meet you in the parking lot. I got 5. We gave a 15-minute window. I said 5:20 to 5:35. It was actually, I don't even have GPS before then. Okay, I didn't have GPS. And I'm going down OBJ. I'm not going to say how fast I was going, but I was cruising down the highway. And then I said to myself, and again, it's a 6 o'clock flight. Man, it's not, the whole thing was messed up. It's like, so I said to myself, if I'm sweating, I failed the test. Why? Because God's in charge. So what am I getting nervous about? If God wants me to make the flight, I'll make the flight. If God doesn't want me to make the flight, I won't make the flight.
Right.
So why am I sweating?
This is called Hawaiian.
Okay, right. Right. So I'm trying to figure out, right? So I'm going down, barreling down the highway, and I'm going like this is just like, I can't get, and none of that. If I get nervous, even inside, that means that I'm not trusting in God, and that's not a good thing. So, press on the gas pedal like it. Spin along. Pull up at the gate. It must have been. It pulled up at. It must have been like 5:28, 5:30. So I go through security. I'm looking for the red jackets. Like to come to. I get my thing, and then all of a sudden I see a guy walking to me. I flip in the keys and I said, "I'll see you later." Wham! Right through the gate. And thank God security, and usually that security is not good. And there was nobody there. I walked through security. As I'm heading down, E25, E27, and of course it's the last gate. There's nobody in the lounge. Ben Epstein, please report to the gate. We're about to close it. And I'm running down the thing. Oh, wait a minute, I'm coming. And I go ahead and I can't. Right? So God said, now why did God make me miss my alarm clock?
Test.
No. He wanted me to get an extra half an hour of sleep. I mean, I slept like 3 hours. They gave me 3.5 hours of sleep.
You needed it.
I needed it. Yeah. I know that God loves me. That's what He did. He gave me an extra half an hour, 35 minutes actually to be exact, of sleep. I woke up. There's no way in the world I should have woken up. Zero.
There's no way in the world you should have made that.
And there's no way in the world. There's no way in the world they should have made that flight. Impossible.
Right.
Right?
It's not even legal to take you at that point.
Right. I'm like, I would have just said, forget about it. I'll just reschedule and like whatever. I said, no. I said, if God did it, whatever God does is for the best. But that's learning how to right, integrate into ourselves, right? That God runs this world.
Yeah, we are not robots. We have feelings and emotions. We react on situations.
Correct.
So it's very difficult. We cannot be like corpses, you know.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Very good.
Who loves you the most? God. After God. Who in this world loves you the most?
You love yourself.
Well, some people do, right? right. No, but who loves you? Who do you implicitly trust to do whatever is best for you? Your mom, dad, your grandparents, right? You know, parents still have to kind of like keep you in mind. Grandparents are there for unconditional love, right? That's the job of grandparents, right? I mean, unconditional love. That's the job of a grandparent, right? Is to give unconditional love. Right? The parents sometimes have to, kind of keep the kids in line, keep them in check. Grandparents are just to love their kids, right? And so that's the job of grandparents: to spoil them rotten, and hand them back to your children. That's the job. I always think I sugar up my grandchildren and tell my daughter they're all yours, right? And to make a little trouble, right? Right? You know what they say, because you know why grandchildren and grandparents are so connected? They have a common enemy. Okay.
You're right.
Right? So what happens is, right? So let's say your grandmother did something for you. Would you think for a second she did something to hurt you?
No.
No. Not a question in the world. Let's say you didn't understand it. Would you think for a second she did something to hurt you? No. Because when you trust her, right? Because you have such a level of trust. There's no one in the world that would ever do something to hurt you. Zero. Right? They would never do anything to hurt you. When you trust God, there's never an issue. Because whatever God does is for our benefit. Right? And sometimes we miss the memo. We missed the memo! Do you know what God does for us?
A lot.
Right, everything. Right? And learning to appreciate that, learning to appreciate what God does for us is the most incredible gift.
Yep.
Right? The most incredible gift. That God had the ground disobey Him. Why?
So you could make man.
Right? So man would, so you could make man. And give us the ability to have free will. And give us the choice to choose to love God. And a choice to do what God wants. Right? You're following? Right. That's what it's all about. Right? We have the choice. We have the ability. Right? That's the incredible, that's the gift. Right? That's the gift where it's all from. Right? And when we learn to do that, right, we learn to have those choices. And make those choices. Right? And that's what comes to day 6 when it comes to man operating what free will is all about. Right? But over here God is saying, let the earth not listen to me because I got to create man. And I give man the ability, right, to not to listen to me. Because if you actually stop and think about it, it's suicide not to listen to God. Right? You actually, like, a person's got to be sick in the head.
Okay.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, how could you think that you know better than God? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like that's crazy. I mean, right? It's absurd. Yet people actually think that way.
Yeah, they will.
I mean, it's a little scary.
Right.
right?
And a bunch of them.
But that's what it is. It's an amazing thing. Yeah.
So why does he stop at day 7?
Why does what?
Why does he stop at day 7?
Why? Because man has everything that it needs to create the relationship. And he doesn't stop. The world is continuously being recreated right now. Every second. Right? God is continuously recreating an entire world.
We have a prayer like that in the...
Yeah, in the morning service. Right? We say we thank God for continuously recreating the world. Right? But it's being in touch with that. I think that's the challenge, is learning to be in touch with that and to be connected to that concept that God is continuously running the world. And when we get to that concept, when we understand that idea, right, then it's the most amazing idea.
So the reincarnation is going to stop someday?
It could, yeah. You know why God keeps on recreating the world? What is the fuel that keeps the world being recreated?
Man's sin.
God's will.
No.
For us to be better.
You know, right? But why? But what's the fuel? What gives God the impetus to recreate the world?
He loves
Give us
us.
a chance to go to religion.
He can't live without us.
No, he can live without us. We can't live without him.
Right. So, right. What is that?
The fuel.
The fuel. What's the fuel?
You tell us.
You're doing it right now.
Studying
Learning Torah.
Studying
Studying
Torah.
Torah. Studying
That's where it all is.
Studying
begins
Torah
and ends,
is the fuel for the world. Right? If there'd be a second, would there be no Torah studying the world would cease to exist. Serious business. Right? If the world would cease to exist for a second. Right? If the world would be no Torah study for a second, the world would cease to exist, which is why, by the way, that's why God went ahead and created time zones.
Time zone?
Yeah. Why the time zones?
Because things can take place at different times.
Right, so everyone could be.
Continuously.
It means if everyone went to sleep at the same time, there'd be middle of the night. There might not be nobody to study Torah.
Yeah, but there's somebody studying Torah all the time.
Very good, because that's what God made. Because it's daylight. It's somewhere in the world. And so there's always time for people to study Torah. Right, that's what it's about. Right, through our study of Torah, we keep the world going. Right, the world exists. And it's an amazing thing. Right, it's an amazing idea. Right. The Torah is what keeps the world going. Right, the world doesn't. Right, the world can't exist without Torah study. Right, and if there would be for a second when we know Torah study in the world would cease to exist. And God is continuously recreating the world so that we can have choose to have a relationship with Him. That's what this world is about. Amazing idea. And it goes down to free will. And day 3 is where we have the free will. Right? That's where free will comes from. Right? The earth had a choice. Right? The earth had a choice. And now it goes ahead, and so now man is going to make from that dirt. We now have the ability, right, at least in our physicality, to make a free will decision. And then God's going to give us the soul, which is then going to give us the ability to make that free will decision.
Just one more question.
Yes.
He created everything in 7 days, right?
Yeah.
But He gave us.
He rested on the
Well, it's really interesting. Okay, there are 3 right answers to that. Okay, go ahead.
But He gave us seven years for us to multiply.
What?
Oh,
What do you mean 7 years?
He gave us 6 days for the creation. Everything was in place.
Right.
Everything was ready to go.
Right.
But now we're living at it for 7,000 years, continuously.
Okay, well, we're 5,778
But the
years
idea
from the
is to go
creation.
6,000.
Right. Okay. Right.
But why?
Okay. So that because 1,000 years is like a
Every
day.
day.
right? For every day, right? And the world has, you see, it's much more complicated because really, is this world a good place to be or a bad place to be?
Good place.
Depends who you ask.
You ask God, is this world a good place to be or a bad place to be?
Good place.
Good place. Why is it a good place?
Because we have the possibility of improving here.
Okay, right. But where was our soul before we were created?
With God.
With God. So why is it good to leave God to come down here?
Because we can only
And
improve
it's
here.
good to only improve. Right? And our job is to go to the place where we go ahead and we elevate ourselves to the level, right, to get to a place of where we've rectified, right, all that distance, the soul. When all the souls have been rectified, then the earth serves no more reason to be. Right? And again, because if Adam and Eve would not have eaten from the tree, right, what would have happened?
We would not have had free will.
We would have gone straight into the Messianic era.
Right.
Right? And that's it. The world would just continued on. We would have perfected the world already.
So was it a good thing or a bad thing that they ate from the tree?
God knew what was coming down. Knew it was going to happen. Alrighty, so they started reading the Torah again from the beginning, from Genesis this past Shabbos. It's coming up Shabbos, they're already up to Parshas Noah. Right? And so everyone have a wonderful evening. Just a couple quick announcements. Number one is this Shabbat, we're celebrating the Ufruf of my son, Binyamin.
Oh, how do you spell that?
Ufruf, yeah, A-U-R-F, Uf, A-U-F, Ufruf, A-U-F, R-U-F, A-U-F, R-U-F. That's when he gets pulled up to the Torah, and we get to throw things at him. We get to throw candy at him. Okay, so that's going to be taking place at our Torah. Then we're going to be sponsoring Kiddush. Everyone is invited to come to join us this Shabbat at our Torah. And then the wedding is going to be this Monday night in Lakewood, New Jersey, in the Fountain Ballroom in Lakewood, New Jersey. I'd love to have you all come join us. If you just let us know if you're planning on attending, so we can set a place for you. And then the following Shabbos. So this coming up Monday night. The wedding is Monday night. So I will not be giving a class. There will be a class here Monday night. For those of you that are not coming, there will be a class here. And then the following Shabbos will be sponsoring Kiddush, right? In gratitude and in honor of my son getting married, and so he and his wife Kayla will be here that following Shabbos. So
and we'll have learning
service
on this Shabbos.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone have a wonderful evening. See you all same bat time, same bat station.
Yeah.